We also want to get to some breaking news. The Trump Organization has been found guilty in tax fraud scheme, have been accused of providing off-the-book benefits to some executives. Rick Newman joining us on set for that. And Rick, I guess, what can you tell us about this and just your reaction to this? Well, this has been going on for a while. Now, this is important because this is not a case attempting to prosecute Donald Trump himself. And in fact, the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, caught a lot of flack for he hasn't officially withdrawn his inquiry into Trump personally, but he's apparently not pursuing it. So they were going after the company instead. And a jury today found the company guilty on, I believe, all of 17 counts of tax fraud and other things related to tax fraud. So the company is going to pay a fine. Nobody's going to go to jail for this. But, in terms of the significance for Donald Trump himself, it seems very clear the Trump fever is breaking and things are beginning to go against Donald Trump one after another. So he's facing bigger litigation than this. He is facing personal litigation potentially, or prosecution, I guess I should say. One is that potential election fraud case in Georgia. The other is whatever the Justice Department is pursuing with regard to all those classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago that he was not supposed to have. Those look like they're going to become criminal prosecutions, and just in the way some of the findings, the judge's findings and things are going in those cases, not working in Trump's favor. So he is facing an increasing amount of legal risk. And, for everybody who said Teflon Don, he always gets off the hook, well, he just failed to get off the hook on this one, or at least his company did. So a lot of people are going to be wondering, is this the start of something bigger?
Yeah, and a couple of days ago calling to essentially trash the Constitution when it comes to elections and throw out the previous election. But he could take another hit in Georgia, and you mentioned Georgia there because Herschel Walker is his guy. His candidates had a tough time, in particular in the Senate. What's the latest there in the Georgia runoff? So
we think we'll know the results of this tonight. People have been doing early voting for several days. Polls close, I think, at 7 o'clock tonight. It's just the two candidates, so whoever gets more than 50% is going to win the polls. Now, we've learned not to trust the polls, but the polls suggest that Raphael Warnock, the incumbent Democrat, has an edge, and this gets to turnout. Who actually votes in a runoff election. It's different from who votes in a regular election. So if this goes as expected, Warnock will probably win by a couple of percentage points. And there again would be another Trump-endorsed candidate who, sure, he can sail through the primary election when Republicans say, yeah, that's our guy, but he can't get elected in a general election. That has clearly that's been the problem with the Trump imprimatur, is these fairly extremist candidates just cannot get elected in general elections. So Trump's endorsement record is pretty poor in 2022. So momentum is clearly going against Trump. And he is running for president in 2024. It's looking like a very limp performance so far. It is. And Rick, going back, if we do see the Democrats take one more seat, so they will have the majority 51-49, comparing that to 50-50 with the vice president as the tiebreaker, how significant is that significant? It is significant. So people might think, well, if you can vote for legislation 51-50, what's the difference 51-49? There is a difference. Now, we're not talking about getting much Democratic legislation passed during the next 2 years because Republicans will control the House and they will be able to block it. Mm-hmm. But when you have 51-49, the big thing to watch for is appointment of federal judges, and then anybody President Biden might want to appoint to his cabinet or to senior political jobs. And it just is easier to do 51-49, so the Democrats can afford to lose one vote. So think Joe Manchin, the West Virginia Democrat, who was often the lone spoiler, saying, being the one guy who wouldn't approve. Well, they can afford to lose Joe Manchin's vote. It would be for things like appointees. Now there's Kyrsten Sinema, who also kind of lined up with Manchin on some things. So they can't afford to lose two votes, but they can lose one vote and still get some things passed. And then there's a few other sort of insidery things that work to the Democrats' favor. If you have a legitimate 51-49 majority, for example, you control all the committees instead of what they've been doing with 50-50 is power sharing. So that has to do with subpoenas. The people they can call up to testify, for example, in the hearings they can schedule. So when it's 50-50 to schedule a hearing, Republicans they need some Republicans to agree on those committees. And if they have 51-49, they do not have to have Republicans in agreement. And that's important for things such as January 6th investigation. So the House committee on that is going to end its work because Republicans are going to shut it down. But in the Senate, if they choose, they can continue that work if they have 51 to 49 because Republicans don't get a say. If it's 50-50, Republicans do get a say and they can block it.
Safe to say a lot is on the line in Georgia today. Rick Newman, as always, thanks so much for having on here.